Hi, everybody. It's Zane with Sailing Views. I have a special treat for you today. This is Dawn Riley. Not only was she on Mighty Maiden and America's Cup and U.S. Sailing Team, and God only knows what else. This woman has literally done it all in sailing. She's been a champion for women's sailing all of her life. Uh, right now, she runs OaKcliff up in New York, and I believe other places. So, hi, Dawn. How you doing? How are things today?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful, sunny, windy day in Oyster Bay, and we have people out on lasers and match 40s and classic yachts, all in their household bubbles, something that we've done at Oak Cliff. We had a quarantine regatta with household bubbles. So we're trying to get as much sailing in as possible while still being as safe as possible.
I gotcha. All right. So, how did you get OakCliff started? Now, did you start it, or who founded it, or how did that come to be?
So the Hunt and Betsy Lawrence, the Lawrence family, had accidentally collected about 36 boats, and in 2009 they hired me to do a consulting job to say what should we do with these, what can we do, we don't feel like we're doing enough. And I came up with 5 different options. They chose what ended up becoming Oak Cliff Sailing, and then I was about ready to go back to racing super yachts and maxis and big boats and write another book and possibly run for Congress. And they said, but you have to come and run this. And I said, okay, for 3 years. And now we're in our 10th year.
I gotcha. All right. So, how many boats are you up to now? I know it started off, you said 36, but it's amassed, obviously, hasn't it?
We're solidly over 100, somewhere in the 103 to 105. Every time we recount, we forget one and we have to add another one.
you know, uh, we kind of, my father kind of did the same thing down here. He collected boats, just mainly all dead boats to give me something to do. And
Oh,
yeah, I had 29 boats at one time, and I'm like, okay, you know what? We've got to stop. It's too many.
yeah,
All
it's
right.
crazy.
Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these real serious questions. Like, how did you get started sailing?
My father forced me to start sailing. Um, my parents met at a regatta on an R boat, which is a really old, classic, narrow racing boat. And once they got married, they had me, and my baptismal party was on the boat, and allegedly, family legend, as you know, in a laundry basket.
Oh wow.
They shoved down below in a laundry basket instead of a cradle.
I was very similar, so that's great. All
Mhm.
right, so who were some of your early influences? Who helped you? Who molded you into the sailor you are now?
Well, clearly my parents, because not only did my dad yell, he was a racer, and I think my mom basically with 3 kids, very young, very close together, was like, take one of them. So I got to go sailing. I think the first time I trimmed a main in a practice was when I was 4. Um, and then we sailed for a year when I was 13. And we went to with the whole family from Detroit out the Barge Canal up to Maine, down to Florida, Bahamas, Grenada, and back. So that was pretty formulative. And when I came back, I started becoming obsessed about sailing. You can imagine 13 years old. I've just sailed for a whole year. Um, we all know what 13, 14-year-old girls are finding their own power. And I was lucky enough to do that on a boat.
I hear you. All right, that actually is a good way to go. All right, so at what point did you think you were good? You know, you were a good sailor, and you're like, okay,
Mhm.
let's go further with it.
With the arrogance of youth, that first day that we came back from the year's cruise, I went sailing on an Etchells with a couple of other people. And I keep telling the story, and nobody's identified themselves as that couple. But I went out, brought my own lunch, and realized on that day that I knew more than these really old people who were probably like 27 at the
Hmm.
time. So that's when I became obsessed. And in that, 14, 15-year-old range, I became a professional boat captain. I worked for Tim Woodhouse at Hood Sales. I delivered, we won our first Mackinac. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And I started telling the world that I was going to do an America's Cup and I was going to race around the world. And thank God I was strong enough, determined enough, whatever gave me the power. For once I said that out loud, I started having severe discrimination. People laughing at me,
Wow.
nice little girl, run along. Sure, we don't have any women on our boat. And instead of me being upset and running away, I just said, screw you, watch me.
Yeah.
And then by the time I was 30, I'd done two around the world, two America's Cups. I'm like, now what do I do?
Yeah, yeah. You've, like you said, you've done it all. And I'm going to jump off my normal script. I have a little script of 20 questions, but I'm jumping off. Tell us
Okay.
about Mighty Maiden, because I mean I just watched that movie like 2 days ago.
Maiden and Mighty Mary, two different.
Yep,
Yeah.
Maiden. I'm sorry.
Maiden was, I was working on boats, IOR boats back then, SORC. I was sailing on Matador, which was Bill Koch's Maxi. I was getting ready to be shore support for the Royal 1000. And I was told about this team called Maiden that was going to sail around the world. And it was an all women's team. And as it says in the movie, the documentary, it was for sure. I was like, I'm not going to sail with a bunch of chicks because I hadn't seen any that I would have considered sailing around the world with. And the friend of mine, Cindy, who ended up helping write my book about the next round the world, said, get over yourself. There's other people in the world. You're not that special. And so I tried out. And it was a good thing that she said that and put me in check. So I tried out. I put my hand through the ceiling when I stretched in the kitchen of the team house, and they said, she's strong, we'll take her. And I ended up becoming the watch captain, diver, and engineer in the end.
Yeah.
And overall, the thing that was the best about that is that we were doing it just because we all wanted to race around the world. At some point, we were trying to prove ourselves, but it wasn't really that. We were just saying, screw you, we're doing this and we're going to do well. And we fully expected to do well. It was this dichotomy of we expect to do well. The first leg we didn't. We were pissed off. We lost our confidence. The second leg we won by 250 miles. And then all of a sudden the world went, oh my God, they're good. So it was, then we were like, okay, now we are proving a point. But that wasn't the initial thing. Initially, we just had 12 people that wanted to do the whitbread, and we were going to refuse to be a cook.
Yeah. Now that after watching the movie and knowing you guys, and trust me, I was doing a lot of sailing at the same time y'all were doing it, and I was watching with fascination. But in my world, big boats like that didn't transfer over to my little sunfish and laser, so I wasn't concerned. I didn't think much about it. But because of that, how far do you think that kicked sailing forward?
Kicked sailing forward?
Yeah, as far as opening the door for women and allowing more.
I honestly don't think Maiden did as much as the Women's America's Cup team for America for a couple of reasons. One, that was the first time it came to America. So very few Americans knew about the whitbread round the world race. They still call it the white bread. The TV, ESPN just started covering it. I was the only American on the boat. And I think Skip Novak might have been the only other American in the race. So there wasn't a lot of coverage, but it was like a fascination. I think the movie 30 years later has done more than the event did in America. Totally different in England, where it was covered in New Zealand and Australia. Like I was in New Zealand for the Millennial Cup a few years ago, and a family in a VW bus stopped me on a ferry and asked if they could introduce me to their kids. And they, as children, the adults as children, watched the boat come in Auckland. And they recognized me driving a really cheap rental car that had dents all over it. And they saw my face and said, that's her. Let's introduce our kids. So in other countries, it made a much bigger impact than in America.
Yeah. All right. Well, about women sailing though, don't you think that helped at least bring a little bit of a light to it in the big? I mean, this was early days when all women started doing things. I mean, that was a pioneering thing. Right.
So before that, you had Annie Gardner doing SORC, an all women's team. That was kind of the beginning of the Rolex Women's Keelboat Championships for the smaller boats. You had Maiden for sure, but remember that was 1989, 90. 1995, which that team, the women's team in the America's Cup, started in 1994, actually started tryouts in 93. That's really in America what gave everybody that was a female sailor at a club level that was told no, girls can't sail. She could say, have you checked out the America's Cup? When's the last time, dude, that you raced in the America's Cup?
Right.
So we can all do this.
Yeah. That's funny you mentioned Annie Gardner, because I interviewed her, and, she just every time I tried to bait her with a question about it, she was like, well, I sail with that guy. I sail with that guy. She downplayed everything. And, in her typical fashion, just,
Yeah.
just being such a saint about everything.
I almost left high school to go race SORC with her.
Really?
And Tim Woodhouse, who was my mentor, and people that knew Tim Woodhouse, he should not be any young girl's mentor. He's passed now, but he would laugh if I said that, and anybody who knows him would say that. But he did give me a very sage piece of advice. He's like, finish high school.
Yeah.
School and didn't sail.
At least you did that. All right. So let's change the subject to boats. What's your favorite boat and why?
I've had this question before, and I always say small boats, a J22, just because that's what we were racing a lot when I was doing a lot of match racing, women's and open. The highest I ever ranked was 12th in the world on the open circuit, so that was pretty cool, pretty successful time. And sometimes boats just fit. That was small enough to be able to be responsive and take in your experience in college sailing and roll tacking and roll jibing and really push the boat around and manhandle it, but it also still was a keel boat. And then on the bigger boats, the Corel 45 was a boat that just fit. I sailed with Tom Neal in Nightmare, and we did really well. Raced with the French team for the America's Cup and won the 1-ton Cup World Championships. And there's nothing in particular. It's the Far 40 that just made a little more sense to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love those Corel 45s. That's always been, if they all held together well enough and I could ever afford one, perfect boat.
Yep.
All right. So, what's your favorite place to sail? Because I know you've obviously
New Zealand.
been everywhere. New Zealand, quick.
I want to move to New Zealand. I wanted to live in New Zealand through the coronavirus. I want to have a Kiwi boyfriend. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. That's simple enough. That squares it away. All right. Well, where do you see sailing going in the future? Past the corona and things like that. Where are we going all foiling in the future? Or are we going to keep the rec rate? Where's the sport going?
So I see Corona as an opportunity. At OaKcliff, we locked down 96 days ago. We have a really smart team that's motivated, creative, dedicated, and working as a team. We've been able to do some projects that we never would have gotten done in our normal rat race of getting boats ready and putting them in the water. We've developed these buffs, which are actually good for preventing transmission of breath. So they're thicker than your average buff. They have somewhere in there, they have a straw hole so that I can drink my cocktail through it. It's right there. So that's one thing. But in terms of the sport of sailing, what we're trying to do is really encourage these household bubbles, people who have been quarantining together. So it could be neighbors, it could be just say 2 junior sailors that their parents have become friends. The parents don't know how to sail. We want the juniors to teach the parents. So we have our match 40s out here, and we're like, you come, as long as 1 or 2 of you knows the parts of a boat, we will coach you from a rib via VHF. We will stay distant, you will stay safe, and we will get you all sailing. So we're seeing this as a very strange answer to the question of how do we get more families sailing together and intergenerational. So we're hoping to see that. Yeah. On the more technical side, I love the current America's Cup boats. We'll see. If Team New Zealand wins, I think they'll be similar, but a little more sane. And obviously, we need more teams in the America's Cup. So the run of the 12 meters, the run of the J boats, the run of the IACC boats, you saw more and more teams as you got further down, and you could get a trial horse, and you had enough people that knew how to sail them, so you weren't reinventing the wheel. So I would guess that we will see something that has some of the technology from the boats that we're seeing right now, and then it's more of a TP 72, say,
Yeah.
size. That, and I think that's exciting. Here's an interesting fact. We're doing match racing. We're doing Cocktail Breeze every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 5:30, and we've already had a match racing event where everybody was buffed up and they were on their own boats, and we had all the safety protocol, which is on our website. But the video from us sailing match 40s is getting more viewership than the video that the World Match Racing Tour is replaying from the America's Cup in Bermuda or San Francisco. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I
Yeah.
think we probably got a little too focused on trying to turn it into Formula One and lost the focus on trying to have good sailing.
I I can't agree more. I think the America's Cup's just amazing, and I love what they're doing. But it has gotten so far ahead of, and I consider myself an excellent sailor, and I'm sure you do too. But I think it's gotten so far technologically and physically advanced than just the normal people can do that it's just mind-boggling. Um, but all right, so let's change up to what is the best regatta you've ever done, or best result, or something that you're just really proud of?
I guess that would have to go to the America's Cup with America True,
Hmm.
um, because that was a team. And to remind people, that was 2000. New Zealand was the event, so obviously my favorite place in the world. And we did some things that were super cool. What was not super cool is I put the first $50,000 of the $100,000 entry fee
Yeah.
on my Visa card, so that
Yeah.
wasn't super cool. But we made sure that we did our very, very best at looking at every candidate as gender blind as possible. We didn't do a great job in getting racial diversity. We had some, but not a lot. We ended up with a team that was about 25% women across the board in every department, including sailing and design team. And then we also we know that for an America's Cup, you get a tax deduction. And we know that it's legal and it's above board and it's like the Olympics, but we called bullshit and said we're going to do something more. So we did True Youth. And that was part of the 1995 to 2000 when we were operating, where we really blew open the doors of yacht clubs. And I know for sure that America True was part of that, with our True Youth. And that dovetailed in with the crunchy granola on the ground community sailing and the America's Cup at the other end, just kind of opened that causeway. And now you see that most clubs have some form of scholarship community involvement, which
Yeah.
was foreign and just seen as bizarre when we started. So that, for all of the impact that we had, that was my favorite event. The fact that we went into the finals in second place without having to sail the second race or the last race, and just the solidness of that team in that boat.
No. All right, so let's change the subject. What's your worst event you've ever done, or worst trip? I mean, I've got a couple of them where, I broke an axle on the way up, broke an axle on the way down, went through 20 tires on a road trip. There's always something that just stands out. So,
Well, I'm lucky that I almost always go by water. I don't tow boats much. My boats are too big. You know what? I would have said Heineken, the second race around the world, would have been my worst, because there were so many things that went wrong, from the fact that I was brought in at the last minute after a mutiny. They tried to mutiny again. I was engaged. I got disengaged. I mean, I had all of this stuff going on. The funny thing is that's how it felt. And then I wrote the book with Cindy, and when I had to, it's available now in paperback, and we had to retype some of it, and so I had to go through and basically reread it, and I was like, huh, it just felt bad. It wasn't that bad. So I don't think I have a worse trip in reality. I've had a pretty amazing life to be able to go from a 13 to 15-year-old girl from Detroit and be a professional sailor at age 56.
yeah,
Not quite, 55.
yeah, I got you. All right. Well, what's the most interesting thing you've seen floating by in the water?
I've seen an unfortunate amount of trash. Um, probably the most dynamic is we were in the Southern Ocean on Maiden, one of those crystal clear blue skies, huge waves, probably 25 knots of wind, which feels like 8 knots if you're from,
Mm-hmm.
from anywhere else. And we're just cruising down these waves. The water, everything's sparkling, and we have the spinnaker up, and all of a sudden I launch it into a full-on broach, and everybody on board is just like, what the hell just happened? And I go, ah. And there was this huge whale in the trough just getting a suntan
Oh
that
wow.
we just missed.
Wow, that is yeah, that's a good reason to broach because
Yeah.
it's something like that. The
And they're
keel's
like,
coming off.
okay, yeah, okay. And we pulled in the sails and kept sailing.
Yeah, recovery, we're good. All right. So, what's your best role on a boat? I mean, are you a better skipper or a trimmer or just overall tactician, or are you
Uh,
just kind of boat mom? What do you?
Crew
What's
boss.
just straight up crew boss? Yep.
Crew boss, yeah, team captain, whatever you want. The Like in the women's America's Cup Mighty Mary, I was the fastest downwind helms person. I was potentially going to be the helms person, but the coaches realized, and then I had to agree, that I was more valuable being able to coordinate,
Hmm.
put out fires. So yes, tactics, strategist, crew boss, just making sure that the sails went up and the sails came down and coordinate the circus.
Yeah, I can understand that role. All right. Do you consider yourself aggressive or conservative when you're racing, or?
Hmm, I think I'm just normal. I just go sailing, strategic.
Hmm.
And if I need to be aggressive, you better watch out. But it's not, and I'm not. It's the whole thing. What does Bill Koch used to say? If you go out for revenge, if you go for revenge, dig two graves, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, basically. And we know around here, we say it all the time: stress makes you stupid. So if you need to be aggressive, you're confident, you're aggressive, you move on and you win the race.
Yeah, I've fallen into that revenge trap a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, no, it always ends up just about failing. All right, so what's one of the best maneuvers you've ever pulled off?
I'm sure that there's 100 more, but one that I remember distinctly that just popped to mind is I was sailing with Susie Leach in Key West and Katie Pettibone, Elizabeth Kratzik on a J70. And it was the first year when like everybody and their brother bought a J70. They delivered them all to Key West. We had, midline marks. I don't know how many boats there were. And we were coming into the Leeward Gate. And I said, we're going to go turn left. And all of a sudden there was an opening to turn right. And I was like, go for it, turn right, turn right, turn right. And nobody else knew what was happening. Susie turned, and I was able to blow the sheet, get the spinnaker, open the halyard, get it down, pull the jib in, and sit on the rail. And I was like, huh, that just happened.
Yeah. Oh, I
But
don't
that's
know.
also when I realized that for me, the J70s were too easy. If I could do
Yeah.
that, I needed something more of a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Some boats are definitely really easy to pull things off.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's your favorite program or the best program you've been involved with? And I know you're probably going to say America's Cup, and I don't doubt that. I mean, Katie, I did her interview, and she said the same thing. So, is that it? America's
Yeah,
Cup?
America True.
Yeah.
America True, San Francisco, the one that Katie was our primary trimmer on that one. It was just good. John Cutler was our helms person. Chris Coffin and his family were our main benefactors. He unfortunately passed away from cancer, but keep in touch with his family and his kids, and they're doing great. And it was a life experience for everybody involved.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, running a program like that has just got to be an eye opener on how serious you have to be and how hard you have to train. Plus, all the people involved. It's just
Right, but it was like I said, that I've done 4 America's Cups.
yeah.
So, and I have the perspective of being the only female and fully funded, 240 people on the team, to the women's team, with the coaches managing the women, which was not ideal. You need to have two-way communication. We fixed all that with America True, and it just was everybody was there for themselves for a better purpose as well.
Yeah. All right. So, you've already mentioned it, but the new America's Cup. Do you love the idea of it, or do you hate it, or are you just sort of in the middle? I mean, a lot of
No,
people
no,
are,
no.
go ahead.
Like I said, I like the boats. I'm super excited about it. In terms of that, I feel a little bit stressed about the coronavirus because it's going to be the America's Cup that was almost so much, right?
Yeah.
Just from the funding, from the time wise. And I think that's what people don't understand is there's a whole lot of strategy going. The fact that the TV crews were allowed and the movie people were allowed in New Zealand and the America's Cup people weren't, it has nothing to do with politics. That has to do with gamesmanship.
Mm,
Um, and that's just one little thing. But the fact that they didn't sail in Italy and they didn't sail in England is a huge amount of technological opportunity missed.
yeah.
So I'm a little bit sad about all of that, but we're moving forward. I think the boats are super cool. I know the team American Magic, Terry, Doug, Hap, Phil, James, Dean, they're all doing an amazing job and they're trying to keep that solid, I'm going to call it Midwest spirit in there. And then also we have two of our graduates who are with the team. Sean, who was a sapling and then tried out, got a come be a tender driver. We'll see if you make the sailing team. They didn't think he would, and he did. And then Robin Lesh, who was their first hire from us, and she is a MIT engineer, was our high performance fleet manager, foiling Wasps, 49ers, all of that. And now she's on their design team from the beginning. And a lot of their design team are people that were with America True. So it's all coming together. I like the team.
Yeah. Great. Trust me, they're stacked with talent.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much talent they have that's sitting on a motorboat or
Yeah.
videoing. It's just
Yeah.
mind-boggling. All right. So, what are your future plans of sailing? Do you have anything coming up, really soon that you're geared up for? Are you still in the wait and see pattern, or?
Well, for this year, we've changed. So we have mostly internal. We're not putting our big boats in the water. We're using the opportunity to do, all of the maintenance. So we're planning for next year for our sapling program to be different. In the past, we've had saplings, which are here all summer, and then we have acorns, which come in and do inshore, high performance, foiling, onboard reporter, and offshore. Next year, I think we're going to have an offshore program in the Midwest. So it'll be both Mackinac, Trans Superior, maybe Harbor Springs, and then deliver out through the St. Lawrence Seaway. We'll have inshore, which will be a series of match racing events here, which will accumulate in our Grade 1 International at the end of the summer. We'll have more Olympic training. So we already have 49ers, NACRA, FX, 470, and fins. And we'll probably we have lasers too, sorry. We'll probably add in the foiling kites and windsurfing here at the end of this year. So we'll have a full Olympic training site with housing and the bunkhouse. And then we have to figure out what to do with our 4 Far 40s. I don't think we're going to take those to the Great Lakes, but that leaves us open for the Annapolis to Newport, the Halifax, and some more sailing around here. And we have 4 turboed Far 40s with A sails and sprits. So that means we show up and we're almost a class by ourselves.
Yeah.
And those are all open for sponsorship. And then I didn't even get to the classic boats we have. Those
Yeah.
stay in Oyster Bay most of the time.
I gotcha. All right, so let's change the subject a little bit to women's sailing. How is the U.S. handling it? What can we do better? Just a quick rundown on those kind of thoughts, because I'm sure you have them.
As I said to my friend Whoopi Goldberg, we've made a lot of progress on women in sailing. We have a tragic amount of progress to be made on diversity, and we need to start going there. We need to, at the same time, if you're talking the big events, we need to have women in leadership roles on the teams, on the decision making, on the yacht clubs, and the coaching, and that will naturally fill in the infield, which is where we're at. We have individual women sailing everywhere, but when they keep running into not being considered, not for anything necessarily evil, just because the person who's the decision maker doesn't naturally consider the women.
Yeah.
So I think we've made some pretty big progress. I haven't seen or experienced much in the past 5 years about people saying outright, no, I don't want women on my boat. It has happened, which is shocking
Yeah.
to me, which is extra shocking. Um, but we now need to get the women in the leadership. And the final frontier will be women boat owners. And there's enough wealth out there to own boats, to hire women, tacticians, crew bosses, project managers, and then we'll fill that in. And we should hurry up and work on the diversity side.
Yeah. Yep. I think we need to work on both. And I don't know how, but there's got to be a way to get more
Well,
involved.
here at OaKcliff, because this is obviously timely, and the question came up, and I was asked what we do about it. I'm like, we just do what we did with America True. We just open up our world, and oh shoot, I just missed an appointment. Oh well.
Uh-oh.
We just open up our world, and they said, "Well, are you diverse?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think." And so I started counting. We have more women than men. Of the women, one is from Colombia. She moved here when she was like 16, so Hispanic. We have one Hispanic Chilean, Spanish Chilean guy. We have one Israeli Asian Chinese guy. We have one gay guy. So then that means we have three normal, but they're not normal because nobody here is normal.
All right. Well, since I know you have appointments coming up, what kind of ideas do you have any ideas on what we can do to help grow the sport and just get it back more into the basics and just get more people coming in instead of leaving?
Well, one thing that's funny is I would have said, let's just get more people sailing, but I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is get more people sailing with purpose. So everybody now wants to learn. If they have a question, they go to Google, they get the answer right away. We've made our boats available to anybody who's a supporter, which is $500 a year. It's like the cheapest thing in town. And I was like, you guys just go for a sail. You have a household, go for a sail. They're like, yeah, but I miss racing. And I'm looking at these people going, you're not exactly the best racer, in my mind, but they want a purpose. They want to learn. They want to have a goal. So I think having a little bit less stress, more educational, and it doesn't mean having US Sailing come up with more books.
Yeah.
It means having proper interactive coaching, creative coaching on the water, having club-owned boats, encouraging people, giving them structure, getting a pre-brief, an event, whether it's sail around the bay, fix marks, or do 3 windward lewards on a Wednesday night, a debrief, and the bar. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. All right. Well, what kind of advice do you have for people that are getting into the sport? I mean, should they just walk up to people, or, what kind of advice do you have for new sailors or people that just happen to stumble across a yacht club at some point?
Walk in and say hello. That's the first thing. Maybe wear a mask nowadays, but walk in and say hello. Introduce yourself, and if you have any problems, just give me a call at OaKcliff, and I'll help navigate. I know people's.
Yeah. All right. Now, with this last question here, this one is really off scripted. How do I get you in a set of quantum sails, or get your whole? How do I shift you over to buying sails from me?
Well, I don't know about from you, but we did have all of our match boats had quantum mains and jibs and Genoas, and that was a little bit of a rogue thing. The DeVosses are great friends. We have, let's see, Doyle, Neil Pride. We have some quantum. Actually, we have quite a few par 40 quantum sails. And honestly, being a nonprofit, we want durable, inexpensive, and then we'll worry about shape. So for quantum, frankly, we use that for our Grand Prix boats, not for our match boats. Match boats, we go with Dacron.
Yeah. Well, I figured I had to ask, keep everybody at Quantum happy. So, all right. Well,
we just bought a J3 with the support of the donor for an 86-foot boat. So,
oh wow.
We try to spread the love.
Yeah, and that's a good sized boat.
Yep. Okay.
Well, with that, we're going to end the interview. You've answered all 20 questions. We're basically done. And so I want to, give you a big thank you. It's always been a pleasure talking to you. I've been seeing you from afar, and we've met a couple times, but have never really got to sit down and catch up. So this was great. And everybody, this is Zane with Sailing Views. I want to thank Dawn Riley from OaKcliff Sailing. She's doing amazing things. I've gotten to sail against some of her teams and see them traveling around. They're doing great. Look her up online. She is who she is. So thank you, everybody. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that button. I need subscribers. So over, out, and bye-bye.